So guys, we're back to being incredibly pissed off because Duolingo could be a bitch sometimes. Alright. Whoa, the real world looks so crazy after spending so much time in VR. But wait, is that it? The demo is all over? Dang it, another chip. I want more. I crave more. If not this game, then give me something else. Something I can really sink my teeth into. It looks like that's all we have. The software reset all the way back to the title screen. And the intro scene with Ivan is exactly the same too. Well, it is just a prototype demo. Where did that get off? Leaving us on such a big cliffhanger. I had a lot of fun though, really. Playing that game was a nice change of pace. Hey, you're awfully quiet, Neil. What do you think of Kingdom of Class? Hey look, the egghead is starting the software up all over again. Sounds to me like he probably dug it. It really is all the same. The intro, the end, the battlements. All of it is exactly the same. Did you guys happen to find any clues while we were in there? What do you mean? Like clues of Ivan's betrayal? I don't know, we didn't get much time with him in the first place. It all kinda came out of left field for me. No, I'm not talking about... I'm talking about RB. It's been so long. Could this game be another one of his tests at long last? Egghead, really? I'm with Axie on this one. It was a fun game, but nothing in there had anything to do with RB, I think. You might be right. Still, I think we should investigate some more. You're not gonna go investigating without us, are you? This thing is pretty neat. This thing is a pretty neat novelty. I bet if we put our minds to it, we can beat the demo quicker this time. Yeah, let's speedrun it. Kingdom of Glass, any percent run. Let's go. A cool novelty indeed. The Kingdom of Glass demo held Neo's attention for almost an entire week. Of course, Juan and Axie played it multiple times that week as well. Discovery of the game interrupted the flow of what was usually one of the biggest weeks of R&D money. Even so, each Axolotl made enough time to finish their inventions for Innovation Day, unveiling at the end of the month. Wow. Neo, although playing through the game multiple times, did not let an obsession take hold of him in a way it might have done years earlier. And playing the game over did not end up being a complete pointless adventure either. Through his constant replays, he found a couple secret places in the game where he could grind low-level enemies. However, aside from a few snippets of unique dialogue, there was nothing of value was obtained, and his core experience with the software was the same each time. That's why, after he and the others had felt like they'd seen every inch of the Kingdom of Glass demo, he decided that it was soon going to be time to disassemble the headset once and for all. He had the right tools, and everyone else was fine with it as well. Neo hoped he could use the technology inside the headset to reverse engineer the game. I don't think you can do that, but he had no idea what he would find, but he expected to see common parts of a computer. Motherboard, CPU, GPU, screws, plastic wiring, equipment, and sockets for the screen goggles. He learned about all of these from a book. But he was less excited about tearing down the headset than he would have liked to admit. In a perfect scenario, he would be able to put it back together, but that wasn't guaranteed. He and the others felt a tinge of sadness saying goodbye to the game world, even if it had become repetitive at that point. But the night before the teardown was to occur, he had a dream. He wasn't the hero thief. Oh my god. Thief with an F, not a TH, an F, or the lowly healer, or any of the other characters present in the demo. It was himself. Himself as a human, with legs and all. He strutted through the bustling town with a swagger in his steps. Dang, look at all those people. It was so much fun to explore. He looked up at the enormous castle with spires and windows towering so high, he had to crane his neck to see the top. He lost himself in the forest, and although monsters sometimes attacked, he could defend himself with ease. When he got tired, he stayed in the inn, and was entertained by the man who posed riddles to his customers. He woke up in the middle of the night to a rustling sound. Someone was here, in his lab. Oxy? Mama? It wasn't them. Before he knew it, a small figure had taken the headset. A small figure had taken the headset and was now rushing outside with it. What are you doing? Rhea, is that you? What are you doing with the headset? That's not a toy. As Neo got closer, the baby backed away. I repeat, this is not a game. Give me the headset. Give the headset to your Uncle Neo right now. Rhea tossed the headset into the direction of the void. How could you? But there was no time to think. Neo only had seconds, if that, before the hurled headset would get decimated. Not on my watch. Neo surprised himself. His legs moved quickly and gracefully. For a second, it might have looked like he would actually snatch it up right as it fell into the void. Wow, that was rough. But as babies, Lee and Air, they wouldn't let him. They caught him at the last second. If not for them, he might have overextended and ended up in the void himself. What's all the commotion? Neo? And the kids? Awake at this hour? Why are you guys so close to the void? Is everything okay? These kids, they got rid of the headset. Under my nose. Chucked it into the void. You did? Why would you guys go and do something like that? In response to that, they went over to Neo and nuzzled them with their heads, despite the fact he was absolutely fuming. They kind of saved themselves, but... Neo, I think they did it to protect you. Protect me? What the hell are you talking about? Protect me from what? Well, from yourself. That's just a guess, though. How? When you get obsessed with something, that something becomes your entire life. You forgo sleep and play, and practically isolate yourself. Well, yes, in the past that happened. But I've changed. I really have. I know you have. Even with the advent of something like the headset, you still manage to spend time with Axie and I, and attend to all your usual duties. But maybe the kids didn't know that? He looked in at them, with their guilty, sleepy faces. The part of them wanted to scold them hard, but that wouldn't bring the headset back. That was bad. You should never take someone's property without their permission. Do you understand? He nodded, and used that opportunity to sulk away. Hey, I'm not done with you. I'm sorry, Neo. I knew how much you were looking forward to tearing down the headset and finding out how it worked. Or if... maybe there would have been one of the... Jesus! Maybe there would have been one of those clues you've been searching for all this time. At first, I didn't think the headset had anything to do with Obby, but the possibility is always there. Neo took a deep breath and then exhaled sharply. It pains me to say this, but it's okay. The inside of the headset was probably just computer components. Our plants are great, multi-purpose tools, but there is no way they could recreate something like that. He trying his best to stay calm. Several nights later, he would let his frustrations in private. He let out his frustrations in private, but for the moment, he kept his cool. I'm with you in disciplining the kids, at least a little. They should be taught good moral values. Moral. I guess, does it matter how you say it? I don't know. His tongue is bad. We can talk to him as always, but there's not much to do aside from that, is there? No, I suppose not. It's been 20 years, and they're still babies after all this time. Well, they showed signs of sentience tonight. Maybe in the future they'll start interacting with us more. Hey, you ever know, Neil? Maybe they were like your guardian angels tonight. Maybe they somehow saved you from something terrible. That was typical Donna, Neil thought, always trying to find the bright side even when there wasn't one. But in a way, it was sort of true. With the headset gone, Neo felt completely free from the shackles of obligation. He was sure the headset had something to do with RB, but now it was gone. And RB hadn't contacted any of them for many years. It was time to let that thread go, at least for the foreseeable future. As the years went on, he enjoyed his time in the tank more than ever before. And a very long time would pass before another serious conflict took place. Well, that was a short part. I guess it's not chapter. I know I guess it would be chapter because there's acts. I don't know. Hutsa, Auxiliary, R&D. These 3 months cover the first half of their calendar. It's more than a half because there's 5. But there are still 2 we haven't talked about yet. The 4th month of each year was called Beautification. This month was curated by Lana. The Axolotl in the tank are most concerned with aesthetic. The theme of this month was appreciating the beauty around them. But really, it was just an excuse to focus their efforts on decorating. They used this month to make their living space breathable and beautiful, placing new decorations everywhere, and tinkering with the bright colors showcased all across the tank. It was a good sister month to R&D, which was all about creating new innovations using the plants, and getting the tank messy with materials for the sake of triumph. At one point, Neil likened it to an art appreciation month, which had slightly displeased Lana. She thought of it more as a way to cultivate their surroundings, to give them peace for the rest of the year. In other words, a clean room is a happy room. By putting in a minimal amount of work during this month, they could look around the tank and breathe a sigh of relief at how neat and organized everything looked. They might not have adored beautification while it was going on, because it was often hard, boring work, but they were always happy they had done it afterwards. The first and third of beautification month was the big maintenance period. Systematically, they would go over each of their creations, from the tallest tower to the stadium they built for their role-playing sessions, and fill in the places which had started to decay or were losing leaves. Missing leaves could happen for a few reasons, including age, but the most common cause was the triplets. During their hour of being awake, zipping from here to there, the triplets would oftentimes fly into structures due to their unbridled puppy-like energy. At first, this had annoyed everyone, but they had attempted to stop this behavior in various ways. But, as usual, the triplets didn't listen. And so the adults learned to live with the occasional hole in the wall. A unique superstition of beautification was that while projects were started and stopped all throughout the year, it was especially lucky omen for a project to be started during this month. This is because, historically, some of the structures they were most proud of, such as the huge swimming pool of ground-up plants and the giant roller coaster, which lifted them all the way up from the bottom tank to the top. I'd really like to see those because a swimming pool of ground-up plants does not sound pleasant to swim in. And I don't know how they got working machinery out of plants. I'd all started construction during this month. Aside from the maintenance period, there was one more holiday during this month. A more somber one. Liam Memorial Day. The 14th of beautification. It was on this day, in the 3rd year, that they had begun creating their calendar in earnest. On this day, they would each go, one by one, to the statue they had erected above Liam during one of the very early years of the tank. Sometimes they would sit above the arm that was buried there. Other times they would focus and try to remember the scant number of conversations they may have had with him all those years ago. But regardless, the green axolotl was never forgotten. Not even for 1 year. There were times, several times in fact, where they were embroiled in other activities, such as lengthy role-playing campaigns, while working on technological advances. That various other holidays were skipped out of laziness or forgetfulness. William Memorial Day was the most sentimental holiday they made, and even when arguments occurred, as they occasionally did, everyone put aside all differences to remember this day. And it was here that we peer into another short, isolated fragment of time. This was the conversation they had about ink, for the first time in a long time. On the 14th of beautification, in the 21st year after they had emerged from the void. Oftentimes, as the years passed, they would visit the memorial separately, one by one, but occasionally they would head there together. The year 21 was one of those occasional years in which they headed to statue together. At the time, they were hard at work on a big lift system, one which they prophesied would change the way they moved around the tank forever. The construction had grown exponentially larger for the past few years, the projects grander and more time-consuming. The man of plants had become cluttered, though, and there were times where it became somewhat of a challenge to go from one corner to another. The system would change all that. It was similar in design to a human ski lift. It would be built on rails, and using perpetual motion, it would take them up leisurely to their work sites. The project ended up being a giant failure a half-year later. But they did not know this at the time. They worked on it tirelessly from dawn till dusk. A holiday soon arrived, a chance for a break, a yearly obligation to remember the old times.
It's beautiful outside, isn't it? I'm sure he'd appreciate it today.
Well, you say that every year, but yeah, I'm sure he would. There was silence for some time as they contemplated their thoughts. Eventually, Axie spoke up. Hey guys, this is a little hard to bring up, but well, I don't want to ruin the good vibes we got going on lately. Axie, we've noticed something that's been off with you for days now. What is it already?
Yeah, come on. We know it's not something that bad.
Right. It's something to do with the memorial, isn't it?
Yeah, so spill it, you big dummy.
Alright. It's a name I've been thinking of. And we haven't talked about too much for a long time now. You don't mean... I do.
Hank. I think of him often too, especially around this time of year.
They all sighed in unison. From time to time, William's name would get brought up, but they had all consciously avoided saying Hank's name for a while now, even when he was more of a distant memory than ever. They had all known that this conversation would happen one day. You know, it's weird, you guys. Lately, I've been having dreams about that time all those years ago. For a long time, those dreams were scary nightmares. But, strangely, somehow over time they become sort of pleasant. In a way that's hard to describe. I don't know what to think, you guys. It's not like I've forgotten how rotten Hank was. Or what I did to him. Yeah, I've had a nightmare or two in my time as well. But just like you, over the years, they've mostly stopped. Anna breathed in and out, and then looked up at them.
I've also had dreams involving everyone. Even Hank. They're not bad dreams either.
Wow, your voice went deep.
I should hate him with every ounce of my body. He called me terrible names, threatened me, and even injured me. He was he was only around for a very short part of our lives. And yet, I can't forget him. I can't bring myself to hate him either, even though I know what he did was so bad, it should have been unforgivable.
Why don't we talk about him? Honestly. Say whatever's on our minds regarding Egg and Liam. And so they talked. For a long time that day, they talked. Well into the dead of night. They talked about what happened years ago. They talked about their memories of the days where they had to deal with Hank violently, and how it made them all feel. It was refreshing to finally let out some of the anxieties they had been keeping knocked up, but felt like forever. If only Hank had played nice with us. He proved he could coexist with us twice.
Even people like him. My heart says he must have had a point of view that made sense to him. Maybe he wasn't a bad guy in his own mind. As stupid as that sounds. But maybe not. Some people are rotten to the core. Regardless, it is not healthy for us to hold hatred in our hearts for so long.
Periodically, Neil would glance over at the void, as if talking about Hank would make the void suddenly remember to spit him out.
All these memories. I'm starting to remember things about Liam I haven't thought of in ages too. Happy thoughts are flooding back, and it's nice. It's nice to revisit a part of yourself you haven't hung out with in a long while.
I agree. I feel bad about what happened between us. But ultimately, I don't regret my decision. Even when I lost my head back then to rage, I was just trying to protect you, Lana.
Oh, I know that, Axie. I've known that for years, maybe even since the start. And I'm sorry how I scorned you back then.
It's okay, Lana. It wasn't a black or white situation by any means. And well, I'd like to think that if the same thing happened again, I'd be able to control my temper. You know, in those days, in my youth, I was really quite obsessed with you.
Well, it wouldn't be.
Maybe I was a little too obsessed with you back then. But it felt natural, for whatever reason. For that, I'm sorry.
Aw, don't worry about it, Axie. You don't even need to apologize for something so far in the past. I still love the heck out of you, no matter what.
I love you too. Just not in a weird obsessed way, like when I was a kid. It's like we've gotten quite a few obsessions. Over quite a few obsessions. All of us. Over the past 2 decades, the relationships were fortified, and they drew closer as a family. To Axie, each of them was unforgettable, irreplaceable. People who had even become a part of his own identity. He realized, as the years went on, that is one hell of a sentence. With Lana, it was a deeper bond than Axie could ever. All together now. With Lana, it was a deeper bond than Axie could have ever hoped for. a bond only a very close brother and sister might share. He felt an extremely similar feeling with Neo as well. Neo was someone he could trust with his life, no questions asked. Seeing how you guys have become my family, well, I know what would have happened with Liam too if he was still here with us. I remember thinking, hoping, even back then, I wish it could have happened with Hank too. And hey, maybe when the triplets learn how to talk. Still cross my fingers so that they're late bloomers. I bet we can become just as close. We know we aren't gonna forget Liam, but I don't want to forget Hank either. I don't even think I could forget the old Galoot. Galoot, that is... wow. I've never seen that before.
If anything, he's a lesson to be learned. A way to educate the kids on what not to do.
You are correct. History is a gift to us from those in the past, so we may learn from their actions.
I've got an idea, but I almost feel bad for saying it aloud. I'm gonna say it anyway. What if we renamed Liam Memorial Day to just Memorial Day? Liam's Memorial stays up, of course, and he remains the focus. The symbolic mascot of the day, if you will. But instead of just him, we could use this holiday to celebrate everyone who has left this tank.
So, Liam and Hank?
And all of those who might leave in the future.
The other two were briefly dumbfounded. Time was relative. Even though there had been numerous calendar changes in the past, in the year 21, things have been stable for a while now.
Liam is still the focus, but maybe, once in a while, we could go to Hank's corner and pay his remains a visit. We still need to hope that...
That threw me off.
Turns out to be good.
I'm fine with that one, huh? We've been avoiding that spot for far too long. I like it too. A splendid idea. And so it was, from that day onwards, William Memorial Day was changed to simply Memorial Day. With this antidote out of the way, our tale begins to accelerate once again. We covered 4 months so far. Hutsa, Actuary, R&D, and Beautification. That leaves 1 more month on our 5-month calendar not yet talked about. There isn't a proper way to give a complete title to this month. Upon conception of the calendar, its name was originally Kids Month. But eventually, the name of the month was changed to GATS. This name change was to be temporary, of course. Just as holidays were moved, refined, and rewritten, so was this month and its theme. The original idea of Kids Month was to dedicate the month to the next generation. That is to say, triplets. They hoped that as the kids got older, the months would become associated with... The month would become associated... Am I reading this wrong? The month would become associated with the values of family. I think there should be a with. I don't know. Thanks. And giving. But, after 20 years or so, it was apparent that the kids weren't growing up as much as they would have liked. They looked and acted the same as they did the day that they arrived in the tank. While time was always moving forward, everyone's biological state in the tank remained unchanged. With a few special occasions as exceptions, the kids would only be up for a single hour each day, swimming wildly around the tank, eating grass, and then sleeping yet again. They do not need to be taken care of in any way, and indeed, the adults could go weeks without seeing them if they happen to be busy. A lot of the time, most of the time even, it was like the triplets weren't even there. But even though Kids Month was temporarily changed to GATS, we never forgot to celebrate Kids Day from year 3 onwards. Kids Place took day on the 18th of month 5, on the anniversary when those 3 emerged from the void. While throughout the year, the adults would visit them periodically. On Kids Day, they would spend every single second of the hour they could with the triplets. This meant running around the tank at high, exhausting speeds, and attempting to keep up with the unexpected turns or about plant-eating sessions that triplets were prone to. Over the years, they tried many ways of getting the kids' attention, of course. They tried holding a surprise party around one of the spots they frequented. Triplets ran through this completely. They tried gently touching the kids with their hands, as if the touch would allow them to bond with each other. They backed away whenever another axolotl touched their clammy, cold skin. On one occasion, Axie attempted to physically tackle one of the triplets so they would stay still. It was a form of play wrestling, but the triplets seemed angry afterwards. They did not like being touched. Their bodies were jelly-like, squishy. Unlike the adults who had hardened forms. Even while they were sleeping, for those long stretches of the day, if any of the 3 adults tried touching the babies, they would immediately begin squirming in their sleep and break free. It was better to leave than be. The last thing they wanted to do was make the babies uncomfortable, after all. Rhea and Lee definitely knew when the adults were there, acknowledged their presence with their actions and grunts, but didn't seem to care one way or another whether they saw them or not. Instead of children of the same race, the babies felt more like pets. Pets who merely tolerated their owner. Not the loyal friend type. They seemed happy enough swimming around the tank, eating their plants, dreaming their long dreams, and exercising intensively during their hour awake. Kids seemed less a major part of Axie, Lana, and Neo's lives than they were originally promised to be. And so, after a great number of years, Kids Month didn't seem appropriate for the name of the month. But what was something they did on the 5th of month without fail? They read their favorite story together. I talked about it. They ended up always reading everything I described their Ryokosho during this month. That was the story, you may recall, of Dr. Gatz, a professor of archaeology, and his findings of an ancient tribe who worshipped a god known as Everything. As described before, the book took a disturbing turn in the second half, with all sorts of strange imagery, visions, and mishaps, as the god known as the Ryokosho wreaked havoc on his life. It was a book open-ended. It was a book open-ended enough to encourage speculation on what actually happened. It was also the book where Neil had found one of the notes from RB. Over time, Lana warmed up to the idea that this was fascinating. There were the books they read from the original days. A few that were action-oriented, a few escaped the series, even some sci-fi, and nearly half a dozen detective stories. But none had the same allure as the Ryokosho book. Over time, the story just ended up being something they did once a year, even though it had once spooked Axie. The sea of glowing hieroglyphics in the cave Dr. Gatz found, the nightmares, the mutilation. But what was most fascinating of all was that it had no conclusion. Was the entity haunting Dr. Gatz known as the Ryokosho all in his mind? It felt like there were layers of mystery there, and after each reading, they would engage in theory talks and discussions. Perhaps some of the visions were symbolic. Perhaps some were nonsense. The end of the story implied that Dr. Gatz was erased from all existence by this entity, the Ryokosho. While the vast majority of the story was told in journal format, the very end was a faculty list during one of the years Dr. Gatz taught. With his name strangely absent, debates on the meaning of the story raged on for years. Lana said that if they really erased him, every action he made since childhood, every reaction he had put into the world, and every student he taught, and that was too sad. Even though Dr. Gatz was likely a fictional character, even though he was painted as somewhat of a jerk to his students and colleagues, they couldn't help but feel sorry for him. And so they named the last month after him. Maybe he was forgotten in the story, but he wasn't forgotten to them. Besides, the name change was going to be temporary, just until the kids got older. It was an annual thing to read this story on the 23rd of each year, but they eventually named the day Everything Day. So even if they changed the month, they would never change the day. At some point, they thought Jesus Christ might own hurts. It would be fun to incorporate the Judeo-Christian tradition of giving gifts to each other. Judeo. Which they would do before reading the story each holiday. The last and final holiday of each year was Void Days Eve, which took place on the last day of the year, the 30th of Gatz. There's not much to talk about with this holiday. It was an excuse to hold a massive party with dancing, tricks, and all sorts of other events that went on tirelessly into the night. On the following evening, on Void Day, the first of Hutzah, they would hold a nice dinner to start off the next year on a good note. With that, you now know, more or less, the calendar that the Axolotls followed their whole lives. There's some minor revisions here and there. Even some holidays and traditions that we haven't talked about, that they tested out but never stuck. But for the most part, these were the 5 months which dictated their lives. Although, there's some periods of time, some lasting even a year or more, where the calendar didn't seem to matter at all. Special occasions, such as Memorial Day, Everything Day, and Void Day, were often kept. But some of the other, less important holidays were not celebrated. So what were we doing that was so important that they chose to ignore most of their own calendar? The answer is special. Long-form games that they immersed themselves into completely. These long stretches of time were among their favorite pastimes at the height of the Golden Age. Many of these pastimes were role-playing campaigns, which they created an entire universe for, complete with set pieces to go along with them. Some of the campaigns they played only lasted a few months, but a couple were so grand they lasted multiple years. They created imaginary cities and armies, and would roleplay their respective characters growing up, training, getting married in some cases. Yep. I thought it would be with an and, but getting older, and eventually dying. There we go. These campaigns that the three Axolotls indulged in made their time in the tank feel longer than it did. They lived as their characters for nigh a century. And sometimes it felt like they had lived multiple lives as multiple identities. They went on quests, they formed all sorts of relationships, good and evil. They created armies to battle one another. Many their imaginary universe have biomes ranging from steampunk to sci-fi, to modern city life to fantasy. Sometimes they base these long games on real-life properties, the sort of stuff they read to each other during the night. Other times, the worlds will be entirely created by them respectively. They lived and breathed as these characters during the height of their enjoyment, going to sleep in their imaginations and role-playing as they woke up throughout the day. Sometimes, after a particularly good campaign, they would sleep together, cuddled up in a handmade blanket, while Neo told them fables he made up. The stories were sometimes realistic, sometimes fantastical in nature. Some were about us far off, some were about far-off lands made of clouds. Others were about a man named Mark and all his goofy adventures. Is that a Markiplier reference? A few were spooky, and others were political in nature. Some stories lasted one evening, and other epics lasted a year, being told each night for days on end. Stories of every genre, every shape, and every existence. On Axie lived for those tales, considered them the most entertaining and brightest parts of their days. Soon enough, the two of them made their own stories, being written on the seemingly endless supply of paper that Neo owned. They'd go from one to another, Lana to Axie to Neo, and regale each other well into the dead of night. Regale, huh? Each of them loved this, adored this. The two who were not the tellers at any given time would theorize and talk the day about where they thought the story was headed. It was in this way, through stories and innovations, holidays and role-playing campaigns, that they made their way through eternity. It's not a hard word. Axie, Neo, and Lana all lived long, fruitful lives together. They swam. They danced. They played. They built. They enjoyed each other's warmth and company. They went on adventures in the tank, which had once been so devoid that they had threatened to call it boring. They built things to utilize the small space to its fullest potential. But even if it felt like it all the time, nothing was forever. Even if a stretch of life feels endless, everything is finite, and everything must eventually end. Something had been building up a long time, and in the year 44 AV, it finally exploded, along with the rest of the tank. The first murmurs of them realizing something was going awry happened in the year 33 AV, on the 4th of R&D month,